Imagine a predator so strange, scientists couldn't even agree on what it looked like for nearly a century. A dinosaur with the body of a crocodile, the sail of a ship, and jaws made for ambush. Not a king like the T-Rex, but something darker. A phantom of the prehistoric rivers, gliding through ancient waters with terrifying silence. It wasn't just hunting fish, it was hunting dinosaurs. And the more we dig, the stranger the story gets. Lost fossils, secret wars, a creature unlike anything else in Earth's history. And we almost never discovered it at all. Long before we understood what Spinosaurus truly was, we almost lost it completely. In 1912, deep in the Egyptian desert, a German paleontologist named Ernst Stromer was digging through a sea of ancient bones. It was brutal work, searing heat, endless sand, and the looming threat of war back home. But what he found would change everything. Among the dust and fragments, Stromer uncovered something odd. Gigantic vertebrae, massive curved claws, a skull that didn't resemble any known predator of the time. And then the most bizarre feature, tall, spine-like bones jutting up from its back, over 5 feet tall, like the skeletal remains of a sail or a giant prehistoric fin. He named it Spinosaurus aegyptiacus, the spined lizard of Egypt. At the time, no one really understood what they were looking at. Even Stromer didn't fully grasp the scope of what he'd found. To him, it was clearly a carnivorous dinosaur, but one that didn't fit neatly into any existing box. Not quite like T-Rex, not like Allosaurus, something else entirely. But then, tragedy struck. In 1944, as World War II raged across Europe, Munich came under a devastating Allied bombing raid, and inside the museum where Stromer's fossils were stored, the unthinkable happened. All of the original Spinosaurus bones were destroyed, gone, turned to ash and rubble. For decades after, Spinosaurus became a ghost, a name in textbooks with no bones to prove it. The creature that could have changed everything about how we saw the age of dinosaurs had vanished. And here's the kicker. Because Stromer's field notes were incomplete, and because most paleontologists only had a few photographs and scattered measurements to go on, Spinosaurus became one of the greatest scientific mysteries of the 20th century. What did it really look like? Was it a land predator? A swimmer? Was the sail for display, heat control, or something no one had considered? The mystery only deepened as more fossils were found in North Africa. Jaw fragments here, leg bones there, but never a complete skeleton. Scientists began to argue. Some thought it was just another large theropod. Others believed it might have spent more time in water than on land. There was no consensus, no closure, and yet that uncertainty only added to the legend. Think about it, a dinosaur unlike any other, whose very existence was erased by war, only to resurface decades later as a puzzle with missing pieces. In a world where we thought we had T-Rex figured out and velociraptors sorted into clean museum displays, Spinosaurus refused to play by the rules. It had become prehistoric folklore. But the story wasn't over, because while the original bones were lost, the deserts of North Africa were still hiding secrets. And one day, someone would return, not just to find new bones, but to resurrect a monster that science had almost forgotten. The mystery of Spinosaurus simmered quietly in the background of paleontology for years. In the 1980s and 90s, popular culture became obsessed with other dinosaurs, T-Rex, Triceratops, Velociraptor. Meanwhile, Spinosaurus was just a footnote, a creature spoken about with uncertainty. But under that silence, something was building. You see, scientists couldn't let go of it. The tantalizing pieces scattered across North Africa suggested that Spinosaurus wasn't just unusual, it might have been the most unique predator ever to walk the earth. There were hints it was longer than T-Rex, its snout was strangely crocodile-like, and there were rumors it might have been semi-aquatic, something unheard of among giant theropods. Still, without a good fossil, it was speculation, until one man decided to chase the ghost himself. Enter Nizar Ibrahim, a Moroccan-born paleontologist who had grown up fascinated by dinosaurs. He'd heard the legends of Stromer's lost fossils, the destroyed museum, the mysterious bones that no one could quite place. And in the early 2000s, he made it his mission to find them again. Not Stromer's bones, which were gone forever, but new ones. It wasn't easy. The Sahara isn't just hot, it's unforgiving. Sandstorms, shifting dunes, and vast nothingness stretch for hundreds of miles. But hidden beneath it all is an ancient river system, long dried up, that once carved through what is now the desert. This was the Cretaceous period's river kingdom, and Spinosaurus ruled it. In 2008, Ibrahim found something. He met a local fossil hunter who had unearthed strange bones, long and dense, with a shape that didn't match the usual suspects. But before Ibrahim could properly examine them, the man vanished, and the fossils were sold off to traders. For 2 years, Ibrahim searched Morocco and the fossil trade networks, until, almost by chance, he spotted the bones again. He tracked them down to a private collection in Italy. They were Spinosaurus, and they were unlike anything ever seen before. The bones were unusually heavy, too heavy for a land-dwelling predator. The tail was shaped more like a fish's fin than a dinosaur's, and the legs shorter than expected. Everything about the creature screamed aquatic adaptation. This was no ordinary theropod. This was a dinosaur that hunted in water, using its crocodile-like snout to snap at massive fish, and its sail perhaps to help it steer, regulate body temperature, or attract mates. With these new fossils, Spinosaurus was no longer a mystery fossil in a textbook. It was reborn. And it wasn't just a dinosaur. It was a monster, a predator so bizarre, so specialized, it shattered what we thought we knew about how dinosaurs lived and died. But that was only the beginning. Because as more pieces of the puzzle came together, so did even stranger questions. Questions about its size, its behavior, and its ultimate fate in a changing prehistoric world. What really made Spinosaurus so different? And what other secrets were still buried under the sands? Nizar Ibrahim wasn't just another fossil hunter. He was on a mission, driven by something deeper than professional ambition. Growing up in Germany with roots in North Africa, Ibrahim was fascinated by the strange stories buried in the earth, none more mysterious than the Spinosaurus. As a child, he flipped through dinosaur books and noticed how Spinosaurus was always absent, or worse, illustrated in conflicting, confusing ways. It was the dinosaur no one could quite draw right. It wasn't as iconic as T-Rex or as fast as Velociraptor, but it haunted him. There was something missing from the narrative, something incomplete. And so, as an adult, with a doctorate in hand and boots on the ground, Ibrahim returned to the land where the legend began, the Kemkem beds of southeastern Morocco. This rocky, remote region was once a lush river system teeming with ancient life. Fish the size of boats, croc-like creatures with armored skulls, winged predators, and, lurking somewhere in that tangled food chain, Spinosaurus. But here's the catch. The region isn't just remote, it's a chaotic puzzle of fossils. You see, the Kemkem beds aren't like the neat excavation sites you see in documentaries where bones lay perfectly arranged. In this place, fossils are scattered and disjointed, washed together by ancient rivers, buried by sediment, and exposed by wind and erosion over millions of years. Worse, there's an underground fossil trade. Local diggers unearth bones and sell them piecemeal to tourists, collectors, or dealers. That's how one of the most important Spinosaurus fossils of the 21st century almost disappeared forever. In 2008, during a dusty expedition, Ibrahim encountered a Moroccan fossil hunter who showed him some incredibly strange bones. Long, thick, oddly shaped, Ibrahim sensed something big. But before he could study them further, the man vanished into the desert. The bones were gone. For 2 years, Ibrahim followed every lead he could. He pored over fossil dealer networks, chased emails and photos, and hit dead end after dead end. And then, a miracle. He stumbled upon a private collection in Italy. Among its strange contents, he spotted them. The same bones he'd seen in the desert, and they were Spinosaurus. Not just fragments. Either parts of a leg, parts of the pelvis, even parts of the tail. This wasn't just luck. It was the break he and the entire scientific community had been waiting for. But even then, he had to rebuild the story backwards. Who found the bones? Where exactly were they dug up? How could he prove the location to make the discovery scientifically valid? It was a race against time, against skepticism, and against the natural decay of knowledge. Because if he couldn't trace the origin of the bones, the find would be academically useless, just another undocumented fossil in a cabinet. Determined not to let this opportunity vanish like Stromer's collection, Nizar Ibrahim did something no one expected. He returned to the desert to find the man who had vanished, the original digger. Think about that for a second. He had a partial fossil, a vague memory, a remote region the size of a small country, and he was going to try and find one man without a name, address, or GPS. But sometimes the story bends toward those who don't give up. After days of asking around local towns, showing sketches, asking vague questions, he found him, the same man, the one who had shown him those odd bones in the desert years earlier. Not only that, the man remembered exactly where he had found them. So Ibrahim and his team returned to the spot, shovels in hand, notebooks ready, hope clinging to every step. And there it was. The original dig site, buried under sand and time, but still holding secrets. From that single moment, connecting the fossil fragments to their true origin, everything changed. The bones were now legitimate. The find was real. And the most complete Spinosaurus skeleton in history was about to rewrite everything we thought we knew about dinosaurs. But this wasn't a solo mission. Behind every major discovery is a team. Technicians, artists, other scientists. Ibrahim teamed up with paleontologists like Paul Sereno and institutions around the world. CT scans, 3D models, and detailed reconstructions began to emerge. Spinosaurus was no longer a ghost. It had a face, a body, a way of moving. And what they saw was startling. Spinosaurus wasn't just adapted to water, it was built for it. With dense bones to help it sink like a hippo, a snout full of pressure sensors like a crocodile, webbed feet, and most shockingly, a tail shaped like a giant fin, capable of propelling it through rivers with powerful side-to-side motion. No other known dinosaur had a tail like that. This wasn't just a dinosaur that could swim, this was the first truly aquatic dinosaur ever discovered. The very idea turned traditional paleontology on its head. For over a century, scientists had assumed that non-avian dinosaurs were purely land dwellers. Now, that theory had been blown wide open. But it didn't stop there. The more they examined the bones, the more questions emerged. Why was its center of gravity so far forward? How did it walk on land? Was it clumsy out of water like a seal? Or could it sprint when necessary? And what about that sail? With each answer, new mysteries arose. But one thing was clear. Thanks to a long-lost fossil, a relentless paleontologist, and a twist of fate, Spinosaurus was no longer forgotten. It had been reborn, and it was unlike anything we had ever imagined. We've long imagined dinosaurs as kings of the land, thundering through jungles, chasing prey, battling for dominance under open skies. But Spinosaurus? It broke the mold. It was a creature of the rivers, a reptilian riddle with the body of a swimmer and the jaws of a monster. So what exactly made it so aquatic? Let's start at the nose. Spinosaurus had a long, narrow snout, not unlike a crocodile's. But this wasn't just about looks. Along the edges of its jaws were small pits, pressure sensors, similar to what we see in modern crocs. These allowed it to detect vibrations in water like a built-in sonar system. Imagine a fish swimming nearby. The moment it twitched, Spinosaurus knew exactly where it was. Inside the mouth, dozens of conical, sharp teeth, not serrated like T-Rex's bone-crushing blades. If it were not for its 4 feet of legs, which are made for running, the tortoise would end up dead someday. These were smooth, curved, perfect for gripping slippery prey, like ancient fish the size of SUVs. It didn't bite to crush, it bit to hold. Now let's talk about bones. The bones of Spinosaurus were unusually dense. In most dinosaurs, bones were light and hollow, ideal for running, jumping, and conserving energy. But Spinosaurus, its bones were solid, heavy, and thick, especially in the limbs and tail. And that's not a flaw, it's a feature. Why? Because dense bones reduce buoyancy. Just like hippos and penguins, Spinosaurus needed to stay low in the water, not float on top. Its heavy frame helped it dive, stalk, and strike from below. This wasn't a creature dipping its toes into the river. It was submerged, stalking like a reptilian submarine. And then, there's the tail. This was the moment everything clicked. In 2020, researchers revealed a nearly complete Spinosaurus tail from a dig in Morocco. And it was nothing like the stiff tails of other theropods. This one was wide, flat, and paddle-like, with tall spines forming a giant, flexible fin. It didn't just suggest aquatic movement, it screamed it. Tests in water tanks with robotic models showed the tail was capable of side-to-side propulsion, like a giant eel or caiman. Not only could Spinosaurus swim, it was likely one of the most efficient swimmers of any dinosaur. So what did that mean for its life? Picture this, a misty Cretaceous river at dawn, giant fish circle below, pterosaurs glide above, and slicing silently through the water, the shadow of a massive sail glides past, barely making a ripple, waiting to strike. Land may have belonged to T-Rex, but the rivers, they were Spinosaurus's kingdom. Still, Spinosaurus wasn't a fish, it was a dinosaur, a predator with lungs, claws, and powerful limbs. So the next big question is, how did it move on land? This is where things get controversial. Earlier reconstructions, especially those from the early 2000s, depicted Spinosaurus as a towering biped, like a slightly weird T-Rex with a sail. But as more fossils were uncovered, that picture started to unravel. The legs were short, really short. Compared to its massive body and long tail, the hind limbs looked almost stubby. Scientists began to ask, could it even walk well on land? Or did it move awkwardly, dragging its belly, like a modern seal? Some paleontologists suggest it might have walked on all fours, using its arms for extra support. Others argue it stayed close to the water's edge, rarely venturing far inland. And yet, Spinosaurus had powerful arms, massive claws, a flexible neck. Even if it wasn't graceful on land, it was still dangerous. Imagine it bursting from the shallows, ambushing an unsuspecting prey animal that got too close to the riverbank, like a grizzly bear leaping from a stream. Except this bear was 50 feet long and had a crocodilian skull. Let's talk scale. Spinosaurus was likely the longest predatory dinosaur ever discovered, possibly over 50 feet, 15 meters from nose to tail. That's longer than a city bus. And it wasn't just long, it was heavily muscled, especially in the torso and tail, built for surging through currents and dragging prey under the surface. Even the sail added to its mystique. While we'll dive deeper into the sail in the next chapter, it's worth noting the sail didn't make swimming easier. It may have even added drag. So why keep it? What evolutionary purpose did it serve? That question still divides scientists. But what isn't in doubt is this: Spinosaurus wasn't an accident. It was the result of millions of years of evolution in a water-rich ecosystem. It didn't just live in the river, it became part of it. And maybe that's why it stayed hidden for so long. Most land-dwelling dinosaurs leave behind cleaner fossil records. Bones arranged neatly after death, easier to excavate, but aquatic and semi-aquatic animals often end up scattered, decomposed, or washed away. That's likely why it took nearly a century to start understanding Spinosaurus. It wasn't missing, it was misunderstood. And now that we're starting to grasp just how strange and specialized this creature was, we're forced to confront a bigger idea. What other dinosaurs, equally strange, equally terrifying, are still buried beneath our feet? For years, the narrative around Spinosaurus was fairly tame, for a dinosaur anyway. A giant fish eater, they said. A niche predator, something that kept to the rivers, far away from the brutal land battles of creatures like Carcharodontosaurus or T-Rex. But here's the truth. Spinosaurus was not some gentle fisherman. It was an apex predator, one of the deadliest hunters of its time. Sure, fish were a big part of its diet. The rivers of Cretaceous North Africa were full of them. Huge, armored species like Onchocristus, with saw-like snouts and massive lungfish the size of alligators. Spinosaurus had all the tools to catch them: pressure-sensitive jaws, dagger-like teeth, and a body that sliced through water with deadly silence. But here's the twist. Those rivers weren't just filled with fish. They were teeming with other animals. Smaller dinosaurs, ancient crocodile-like predators, giant turtles, pterosaurs, and more. And in a world that brutal, no top predator survives by being picky. Some fossilized bones show bite marks that may have come from Spinosaurus. Others suggest scavenging. Paleontologists have even found bones of land-dwelling dinosaurs, like iguanodonts, in the same regions where Spinosaurus hunted. Could it have preyed on these creatures too? Let's think about it. This was an animal with massive forelimbs, strong claws, and the ability to launch itself from the water like a crocodile ambushing a zebra. If a smaller herbivore came to drink from the riverbank, it might never have seen Spinosaurus coming. One lunge, one slash, game over. And here's where things get more interesting. In the same region, what we now call the Chemchem beds, other huge predators roamed. Carcharodontosaurus, a massive carnivore with a mouthful of serrated blades. Deltadromeus, a fast, agile hunter. Sarcosuchus, a monstrous croc that could swallow prey whole. How did all these giants coexist? The answer might be what makes Spinosaurus so terrifying. It carved out a niche that no one else could touch. It dominated the water. Other predators stuck to land. But Spinosaurus had access to a massive food supply that none of them could reach. It didn't have to compete with Carcharodontosaurus directly. It could thrive in the rivers, picking off fish, ambushing from the shallows, and possibly even dragging prey into the water like a modern-day Nile crocodile. That made it uniquely dangerous because it wasn't just powerful, it was unpredictable. A hybrid between a shark and a land predator. A nightmare that could strike from above or below. And once it had you, you weren't getting away. Of course, calling Spinosaurus an apex predator isn't just about what it could do, it's about what it meant for the ecosystem. Think about modern Africa. Lions don't have the same role as crocodiles, yet both dominate in their own environments. One rules the savanna, the other rules the riverbank. And when they cross paths, it's explosive. Now, rewind the clock 100 million years. In the Cretaceous period, Spinosaurus was the crocodile turned up to 11. It was longer than a T-Rex, possibly heavier. It didn't just wait in the water. It actively patrolled. It likely able to swim long distances, dive deep, and even rest partially submerged. Its sail rising like a warning flag above the surface. Some scientists now believe that Spinosaurus may have had semi-nomadic hunting patterns, moving up and down ancient river systems, claiming massive stretches of water as territory. And here's a chilling thought. When the rivers dried up in the dry season, what did it do? Did it retreat to deeper channels? Did it follow the water? Or did it turn to hunting land-based prey? There's evidence that Spinosaurus may have been opportunistic, meaning if it was hungry and the chance presented itself, it wouldn't hesitate to kill something larger even out of the water. It had the tools. Strong arms with hooked claws, perfect for slashing, a long neck with shocking reach, jaws that clamped down like a bear trap. Even if it couldn't chase prey across open plains, a sneak attack near the river's edge could end the hunt before it even began. And unlike other dinosaurs, it likely swallowed prey whole or in large chunks, much like modern reptiles. No chewing, just grip, thrash, and gulp. Even its body language would have been eerie. Picture a 50-foot-long creature, partially submerged in a river, only its sail visible above the reeds. A sudden splash, silence, then a powerful surge as it explodes from the water, jaws wide, claws flailing, dragging its prey below. Nowhere was safe, not the river, not the shore. That's what makes Spinosaurus so chilling. It wasn't just big, it wasn't just strange, It was strategically designed to dominate a part of the ecosystem that no other large predator dared to specialize in. And while T-Rex may have ruled the north, Spinosaurus was the undisputed king of the prehistoric South. Yet, for all its strength and success, one part of its body still baffles scientists to this day. A structure so dramatic, so theatrical, that it almost feels out of place. That's right, the sail. Why did it have one? What purpose did it serve? And what can it tell us about how Spinosaurus lived or died? That's where we're headed next. If Spinosaurus wasn't already strange enough, crocodile snout, swimmer's tail, dense bones, there's one feature that truly sets it apart from every other dinosaur in the history books, that massive sail on its back. Over 6 feet tall in some reconstructions, stretching from the base of the neck to the tip of the tail, the sail is made from elongated neural spines, bony projections that shoot upward from the vertebrae, like the frame of a giant fin. And here's the thing, no one knows why it's there. There are theories, plenty of them, but every answer opens another question. Let's start with the most basic idea, thermoregulation. Some paleontologists believe the sail may have helped Spinosaurus control its body temperature. Much like the ears of an elephant or the plates of a stegosaurus, a large surface area full of blood vessels could absorb or release heat, depending on the environment. The idea makes sense until you realize that Spinosaurus lived in a hot, humid environment. A massive sail exposed to the African sun might have been more of a heat trap than a cooling mechanism. And if it was just about heat regulation, why develop something so dramatic? Why not smaller plates or internal regulation like most other dinosaurs? That leads us to the next theory, display. The sail might have been a visual billboard used to intimidate rivals, attract mates, or even identify individuals within a species. Think of the bright crests on modern birds or the elaborate horns on some antelopes. A towering sail could have made Spinosaurus look much larger and more intimidating from the side, useful if you're competing for territory, scaring off intruders, or even bluffing against other predators. But that theory too raises problems because building a sail that big is expensive, biologically speaking. It takes energy, resources, and time to grow, so evolution would only favor it if it gave Spinosaurus a major advantage. Some scientists have argued it may have served multiple purposes. A little temperature regulation, a little intimidation, a little courtship behavior, a Swiss army sail, so to speak. And then there's the most curious theory of all, hydrodynamic function. Could the sail have helped Spinosaurus swim? Maybe it acted like a dorsal fin, helping the animal stabilize as it glided through rivers and lakes. It's an intriguing idea, but most hydrodynamic structures in aquatic animals are shorter, sleeker, and more flexible. Spinosaurus's sail, based on fossil evidence, was likely tall and rigid, not exactly ideal for graceful movement through water. So, if it didn't help cool the body, if it didn't help it swim well, and if it was too biologically expensive for just looking scary, why did it exist at all? To solve the mystery of the sail, some scientists have turned to something less obvious, but maybe more telling, evolutionary history. You see, Spinosaurus isn't the only creature in its family with a sail. Its close relatives like Suchomimus and Ichthyovenator also had elongated neural spines, though none quite as extreme. This suggests the sail didn't just appear out of nowhere. It was part of a long, slow transformation over millions of years, gradually becoming more elaborate. But evolution doesn't always optimize for function. Sometimes, traits are exaggerated by sexual selection, like the peacock's feathers. Beautiful? Absolutely. Practical? Not really. Could the sail have been Spinosaurus's version of that? A massive, dramatic structure designed not to help it survive, but to help it reproduce? If so, it changes how we see this dinosaur entirely. It's no longer just a killing machine, it's a performer too. A creature that balanced power with pageantry. One moment ambushing prey from a riverbank, the next rising up in a slow, eerie display, its sail catching the light like the fin of a mythical beast. But here's where things take a weird turn. Some recent research suggests that Spinosaurus may not have had a sail, at all, at least not in the way we've imagined it. Instead of a tall, skinny, fan-like structure, newer reconstructions propose something more like a hump, similar to that of a bison or camel, a massive ridge of muscle and fat that gave it strength and support, especially for aquatic movement. That would mean our mental image of Spinosaurus gracefully slicing through water with a massive sail trailing behind might be totally wrong. But here's the beauty of paleontology. We're constantly rewriting the story, new fossils, new methods, new ideas. All of them help us look again at the things we thought we understood and realize we're only scratching the surface. And maybe that's what the sail represents more than anything else. Not just a piece of anatomy, but a symbol of the unknown. A flag waving from the past, reminding us how much mystery still surrounds this creature. Because for all our scans, measurements, and theories, we don't really know what it was for. And maybe that's okay, because mystery is what keeps us digging. Next, we're going to look at the fossils that finally started to give us real answers. The bones that sparked global headlines and changed the Spinosaurus story forever. It was dusty, it was hot, and it was buried in one of the most remote places on Earth. But what lay beneath that sand, it would reshape everything. Sometimes hinges on a quiet moment. A discovery in a place so remote, so dry and lifeless, that it seems like the last place you'd find answers. But that's exactly where it happened, in the red rock wilderness of the Moroccan Sahara. In the early 2010s, a team led by paleontologist Nizar Ibrahim, along with colleagues and local fossil hunters, uncovered what would become one of the most game-changing Spinosaurus skeletons ever found. It started with a strange bone. Unlike the usual dinosaur remains, jumbled, broken, scattered, this one was different. It was dense, heavy, almost too solid for a dinosaur bone. And then came another, and another. Over time, a partial skeleton began to emerge from the sand, and it didn't look like anything they'd seen before. It wasn't just fragments, it was a coherent, consistent set of bones, all from the same individual. And once they put the pieces together, it was clear Spinosaurus was even stranger than anyone had imagined. This new fossil, dubbed FSAC KK 11,888, offered the most complete look yet at Spinosaurus's tail, hips, limbs, and torso. It wasn't just a better picture, it was a revelation. One of the biggest shocks? The tail. Instead of being long and stiff like most theropods, it was tall, flat, and remarkably flexible. A double row of elongated neural spines ran along its length, forming a fin-like paddle. This wasn't a structure for balance on land, this was a swimmer's tail, designed for side-to-side propulsion, just like modern aquatic animals. For years, scientists had debated whether Spinosaurus was a swimmer or just water-friendly. This fossil settled it. Spinosaurus was fully aquatic, the first non-avian dinosaur built to live in the water. It was like discovering that lions could breathe underwater. Everything changed. Even more compelling was the structure of its legs. The hind limbs were much shorter than expected. Compared to its massive body, the legs seemed almost out of proportion. Strong, yes, but built for paddling, not sprinting. Combined with the dense limb bones and wide feet, it pointed toward a dinosaur that may have spent more time submerged than on dry land. But what truly floored the scientific community wasn't just the tail or the legs. It was how complete the picture was becoming. For the first time in over a century, paleontologists weren't just guessing. They had a physical body to work with, a blueprint that turned theory into form. Artists could now render Spinosaurus not as a lizard-shaped mystery with a sail, but as a powerful aquatic predator, sliding through ancient rivers with deadly grace. And yet, these bones weren't resting in a pristine museum. They had nearly vanished, traded through fossil markets, scattered between collectors. It had taken years of detective work to reunite them. The story behind the fossils was as incredible as the fossils themselves. The bones that reshaped Spinosaurus weren't pulled from a protected dig under perfect conditions. No white tents, no universities watching. They were found by local fossil hunters working under the brutal desert sun, digging for a living. These individuals aren't scientists, but without them, Spinosaurus might still be a mystery. And that's part of what made this discovery so extraordinary. Nizar Ibrahim and his team didn't just stumble upon the bones. They tracked them down across countries, through markets, into private collections, and finally back to their origin in Morocco. This wasn't just paleontology, it was detective work. When the tail fossil was finally assembled, Ibrahim and his colleagues published their findings in 2020. The reaction? Explosive. Headlines screamed, "A dinosaur that could swim! Spinosaurus rewrites the rulebook. The first aquatic dinosaur?" And for once, the hype wasn't exaggeration. The fossils showed an animal fundamentally different from any other predator in the dinosaur world. It wasn't a fast runner like Velociraptor, it didn't have bone-crushing jaws like T-Rex, but in the water, it was likely unmatched. Think of it like this. If T-Rex was the grizzly bear of its time, powerful, dominant on land, then Spinosaurus was the prehistoric saltwater crocodile, only longer, heavier, and maybe smarter. It likely hunted by stealth, using low visibility, vibration detection, and powerful tail bursts to launch surprise attacks. And suddenly, the timeline of dinosaur evolution had a new branch. For over a century, paleontologists believed that non-avian dinosaurs were strictly land dwellers, that even if they lived near water, they didn't live in it. But Spinosaurus shattered that assumption. And here's what makes that even more exciting. If one dinosaur became aquatic, could others have followed? Could there be more swimming predators waiting to be discovered? Huh. Creatures that have left only scraps, fragments, hints buried in ancient rivers across the globe. The Spinosaurus fossil didn't just rewrite one species, it reopened the book on dinosaur evolution itself. But as we've seen before, fossils are fragile things. The bones of Spinosaurus have been bombed, lost, sold, and smuggled. It took over 100 years to gather the pieces we have today. What else might be lost forever? And what other monsters from the deep still wait beneath the sands? To truly understand Spinosaurus, you have to step back, zoom out, because this wasn't just a bizarre dinosaur dropped into a quiet prehistoric pond. No, Spinosaurus lived in one of the most dangerous ecosystems ever to exist. Welcome to Cretaceous North Africa, around 100 million years ago. It wasn't a desert back then. It was a lush, sprawling network of rivers, swamps, mangroves, and lakes. Hot, humid, buzzing with life. The skies were filled with massive pterosaurs. The water rippled with ancient fish, some the size of small boats. And the land? It was ruled by monsters. Let's start with one of Spinosaurus's most famous neighbors, Carcharodontosaurus, the shark-toothed lizard. This wasn't just a rival predator, it was another apex carnivore, stretching over 40 feet long with jaws full of blade-like teeth. Unlike Spinosaurus, Carcharodontosaurus was built for land. Tall, powerful legs, a skull like a guillotine. It didn't swim, it ran, it chased, it ripped prey apart with terrifying speed. If Spinosaurus was the king of the rivers, Carcharodontosaurus was the tyrant of the floodplains. And they weren't alone. Another player in this deadly ecosystem was Deltadromeus, a fast, slender predator whose name means delta runner. While not as massive as the other two, it was built for speed, likely picking off smaller prey or scavenging where it could. But the real wild card? Sarcosuchus. Also known as the super croc, at nearly 40 feet long, this ancient croc was every bit as dangerous as the dinosaurs it lived alongside. It had a broad, powerful snout, armor-plated skin, and jaws strong enough to crush bone. Imagine a crocodile, but twice as big. It may have clashed with Spinosaurus in the water, fighting for territory, prey, or simply survival. Then there were the fish. You might think of fish as harmless, but not in this world. Species like Onchocristus, with a long, saw-like snout, could reach up to 8 meters, 26 feet. These were armored giants with teeth and spines that could do serious damage, even to a predator. Spinosaurus's waters weren't calm. They were chaotic, competitive, and crowded. So how did it survive? Simple. It specialized. While Carchodontosaurus stalked the open land and Sarcosuchus ruled the still waters, Spinosaurus carved out a middle ground, a river hunting niche no one else could match. Its semi-aquatic body let it go where others couldn't. Its sensory size kept most other predators at bay, and its massive size kept most other predators at bay. But coexistence didn't mean peace. What happened when these titans crossed paths? Imagine this: the morning sun rises over a steaming Cretaceous river. Mist clings to the water. A herd of ancient hadrosaurs cautiously drinks near the bank. Just beneath the surface, something moves. Slow, deliberate, invisible. Then, an eruption of water and teeth. Spinosaurus strikes. But before it can finish, another shadow looms from the trees. Carcharodontosaurus. Two apex predators. Two very different specialties. But sometimes their territories overlapped. And when that happened, you can bet it wasn't pretty. Did Spinosaurus and Carcharodontosaurus ever actually fight? We'll never know for sure. Fossils rarely preserve behavior, but we do know they lived in the same region at the same time. And when two super predators share a space, competition is inevitable, whether direct or indirect. That's what makes the chem beds so fascinating and terrifying. It wasn't just one predator. It was a stacked roster of deadly creatures, all living shoulder to shoulder. In modern ecosystems, top predators are usually few and far between. Lions have vast territories. So do tigers, crocodiles, and killer whales. They need space, food, and control. So how could multiple giant carnivores thrive in one region during the Cretaceous? It turns out the key was resource partitioning. Each predator in the chem ecosystem likely focused on a different set of prey or hunted in different environments. Spinosaurus dominated the rivers. Carcharodontosaurus prowled the floodplains. Deltadromeus ran down smaller prey. Sarcosuchus lurked in ambush. By specializing, they reduced direct conflict and shared the same deadly neighborhood without wiping each other out. Still, the tension must have been constant. One wrong step into another's territory, one stolen kill, one hungry dry season. That's all it would take to trigger a clash. And in those moments, the air would have shaken with roars, water would have boiled with splashes, and blood would have stained the mud. This wasn't Jurassic Park. This was real, raw, and relentless. And Spinosaurus, with its bizarre, water-loving body, had found a way to survive it all. What's even more incredible is this. We know all of this from just fragments, fossils, teeth, bits of bone. And from those silent remains, we've reconstructed one of the most dangerous, dynamic ecosystems in Earth's history. But every fossil tells two stories, the one we can read and the one we haven't found yet. What new giants still lie buried beneath the Sahara? And what could their bones tell us, not just about Spinosaurus, but about the lost world it called home? For millions of years, Spinosaurus ruled the waterways of Cretaceous North Africa. It was fast, powerful, and perfectly adapted. The rivers were full of prey, its competitors stayed in their lanes. Everything about Spinosaurus said, this creature was built to last. But like so many apex predators before it, its reign came to an end. The fall of Spinosaurus isn't marked by a single moment, a grand extinction, or a fiery meteor that would come later for others. Instead, the downfall of this river king was quiet and slow. So what happened? Let's start with the environment. During the mid-South Cretaceous, the region we now call the Sahara was a sprawling wetland paradise. Rivers twisted across the landscape, floodplains stretched for miles, and life thrived in every corner. But over time, the planet changed. Tectonic shifts and rising temperatures began to alter the region's geography. Sea levels fluctuated. The once plentiful river system started to dry up. What was once a lush, fish-infilled habitat slowly gave way to harsher, drier conditions. And for a dinosaur so highly specialized for aquatic life, that spelled trouble. Spinosaurus's body, its dense bones, wide feet, short legs, and swimming tail, was perfect for rivers. But if those rivers dried up or shrank seasonally, mobility became a problem. It couldn't chase prey across open plains like its land-based cousins. Food sources may have dwindled, fish populations dropped, River systems fragmented, and with fewer fish came fierce competition. Creatures that had once coexisted peacefully may have been pushed into direct conflict over dwindling resources. Perhaps Sarcosuchus became more aggressive. Perhaps Carcharodontosaurus began venturing closer to the rivers. And in desperate times, boundaries blur. For Spinosaurus, already a creature on the edge of multiple worlds, part land, part water, that pressure may have been too much. But environmental change wasn't the only threat. Some researchers believe that changing sea levels might have trapped isolated populations of Spinosaurus. Cut off from each other, they couldn't interbreed or migrate to better conditions. Genetic diversity would shrink, vulnerability would rise, and over thousands of years, the perfect predator became a victim of its own specialization. It's a strange irony, isn't it? The same features that made Spinosaurus so successful, its aquatic adaptations, its unique anatomy, also made it fragile in the face of change. While more generalist predators could adapt, move, or shift their diets, Spinosaurus may have found itself stuck, a river hunter with nowhere to swim. And eventually, the last of them disappeared. Not in a blaze of glory, but in silence. The rivers ran dry, the fish thinned out, and the king of the waters vanished from the fossil record. But its story didn't end there, because unlike most dinosaurs, Spinosaurus had a second life, not in the swamps of prehistory, but in the minds of paleontologists, fossil hunters, artists, and dreamers. Its bones, scattered across continents, became puzzle pieces in a global mystery. Even after its extinction, Spinosaurus refused to go quietly. Remember, the first fossils were discovered over a century ago in Egypt by Ernst Stromer. A partial skeleton, jaw, vertebrae, parts of the skull, enough to name it, enough to sketch it, but not enough to understand it. Then came World War II. In 1944, during an Allied bombing raid over Munich, the museum housing Stromer's fossils was destroyed. The bones were gone, just like that. Blown to dust. For decades, Spinosaurus became a ghost, a name in the records, a sketch in a notebook, a legend. Most paleontologists assumed it was just another theropod, a weirdo cousin of T-Rex. No one imagined it was an aquatic monster, longer than a bus, built for a river world that no longer existed. But little by little, piece by piece, Spinosaurus came back. Fossils from Morocco, CT scans, new technologies, brave expeditions into the Sahara. And in the hands of modern researchers like Nizar Ibrahim, that ghost began to take form again, clearer, stranger, and more spectacular than anyone had dared hope. So while Spinosaurus may have fallen from its throne millions of years ago, today it stands taller than ever in our understanding of Earth's history. It's no longer just a footnote, no longer just a dinosaur with a sail. It's proof that evolution experiments, that nature doesn't always follow the rules, that sometimes the most bizarre creatures are the ones we understand the least. And most importantly, it's a reminder that even after extinction, stories can survive. Stories that stretch across time, across continents, across generations of scientists chasing shadows through the desert. Spinosaurus may be gone, but its legacy, it's roaring louder than ever. There are dinosaurs we all grow up with: T-Rex, Triceratops, Velociraptor. They dominate pop culture, toys, movies, and museum halls. But then there's Spinosaurus, the late bloomer, the enigma, the creature that arrived late to the party but instantly stole the spotlight. And once it showed up, we couldn't get enough of it. You could argue that the modern obsession with Spinosaurus truly began in 2001 with the release of Jurassic Park 3. Suddenly there it was, bigger than a T-Rex, with a sail slicing through the fog and jaws like a prehistoric crocodile. In the film, Spinosaurus kills a T-Rex in a one-on-one fight, a scene that shocked audiences and triggered countless debates. Was it accurate? No, not really. Did it matter? Absolutely not. Because for the first time, a global audience saw Spinosaurus not just as a strange name in a dusty textbook, but as a living, breathing monster, something primal, sleek, and alien. Kids asked for Spinosaurus toys. Documentaries followed. Fan art exploded online, and paleontologists, they took notice too. And that's where the real beauty lies. Spinosaurus isn't just a pop culture villain, it's a scientific muse. It challenges assumptions. It refuses to be pinned down. Every time we think we understand it, a new fossil appears or a new theory arises, and suddenly the narrative shifts again. For paleontologists, that's not frustrating, it's thrilling, because Spinosaurus is one of the most dynamic, evolving stories in modern paleontology. It's the poster child for why science is never really finished, why discovery is a constant, living process, and fans feel that too. Online forums, Reddit threads, YouTube documentaries, they're filled with people dissecting every reconstruction, every fossil find, every new paper. People who aren't just watching from the sidelines, they're invested. They argue over tail design, over sail purpose, over land speed versus swim depth. They create 3D models, animations, and even speculative artwork that fills in the gaps science hasn't answered yet. And maybe that's what makes Spinosaurus so magnetic. It's unfinished. Unlike T-Rex, which feels fully mapped out, Spinosaurus still holds secrets. It invites you to imagine, to guess, to wonder. It's both a scientific puzzle and a cultural icon. And for a dinosaur that was once forgotten, once destroyed, once miscast as a secondary predator, that's one heck of a comeback. What's most fascinating is how Spinosaurus sits at the intersection of science and imagination. It's real. Undeniably, we have the bones, the sediment, the context, but it still feels like a myth, part dragon, part crocodile, part chimera, a dinosaur so unusual that even experts occasionally shake their heads and ask, wait, this thing actually existed? That strange blend, real but unreal, is part of its charm. In an age of CGI monsters and fictional beasts, Spinosaurus reminds us that nature beat us to it. That Earth, millions of years ago, produced creatures more bizarre and cinematic than anything Hollywood could script. And it's not just adults who are hooked. For younger generations, Spinosaurus has become a gateway dinosaur, the kind that sparks curiosity, that turns kids into amateur paleontologists. They Google its name, they sketch it in notebooks, they ask teachers why it looks so different from the others. Because unlike a T-Rex, which is all brute force and simplicity, Spinosaurus makes you ask questions. Why the sail? Why the crocodile snout? Why the aquatic lifestyle? In that way, it's not just a dinosaur. It's an invitation. A door cracked open, welcoming you into this strange, wonderful world of paleontology. And let's not forget the scientists themselves. Many modern researchers, especially those working in North Africa, say that Spinosaurus is what pulled them into the field in the first place. Not just because of its fame, but because of the mystery. They saw it not as a solved equation, but as a challenge, a creature that demanded explanation, and that pursuit of bones in the desert, of truth in the dirt, is what paleontology is really about. The thrill of asking, what don't we know yet? So yes, Spinosaurus is a fan favorite, a pop culture beast, a YouTube star, but it's also something deeper. It's proof that even in a world flooded with information and answers, there are still places, still creatures that make us stop, stare, and wonder. And as long as those questions remain unanswered, our obsession will keep growing because we're not done with Spinosaurus. And Spinosaurus, it's not done with us. Spinosaurus isn't just a creature of the past, it's a symbol of the future. Because as wild as it is to imagine this 50-foot swimmer stalking ancient rivers, what's even more exciting is this. We're still learning new things about it right now. And every time we do, it changes everything. That's the magic of paleontology in the 21st century. It's no longer just about digging bones and guessing what they looked like. Today, we've got tools that would have seemed like science fiction even a few decades ago. CT scans that let us peer inside fossilized skulls, laser surface scans that capture every microscopic detail of a bone's surface, isotope analysis that reveals what a dinosaur ate, drank, or how it migrated. Even artificial intelligence is being trained to detect bone fragments in digital scans faster than the human eye. And you know who's right in the middle of that revolution? Spinosaurus. It's the perfect candidate. A creature so unusual, so incomplete, and so full of mystery that it forces researchers to think outside the box, to take risks, to push technology further. Take, for example, the recent tail reconstruction. That discovery didn't just come from a lucky dig. It came from comparing fossils with modern swimming animals like eels, crocodiles, and salamanders, then feeding that data into biomechanical models. And when the simulations ran, Spinosaurus swam. Really, swam. That wasn't just a cool revelation, it was a paradigm shift. It opened the door to the possibility that other dinosaurs, perhaps ones we haven't even discovered yet, might have had aquatic tendencies too, and it inspired new expeditions to places that had been overlooked before. Because if a giant swimmer like Spinosaurus existed, maybe its prey, competitors, and ancestors are still waiting under the sand. Which brings us to a powerful truth. Paleontology is no longer just about filling museum halls. It's about understanding the story of life, how it adapts, how it evolves, and how it ends. Spinosaurus is part of that story, but it's also a trigger, a fossilized clue that tells us we're just scratching the surface. Spinosaurus teaches us something powerful. The past isn't set in stone. Even fossils, the ultimate symbols of permanence, can rewrite themselves in light of new discoveries. What we once thought was just a weird, sail-backed theropod has become one of the most fascinating predators to ever walk or swim on Earth. But it doesn't stop with Spinosaurus. Its legacy is inspiring a new generation of paleontologists, young scientists who aren't afraid to challenge old assumptions or ask big, weird questions. They're not just focused on bones anymore. They're studying ecosystems, behavior, evolutionary pathways, climate change. They're asking, what did these animals hear? How did they raise their young? Could they migrate? What happened to their environments when the rivers dried up? And Spinosaurus is at the heart of all that curiosity. Its strange body forces us to look harder. Its missing pieces remind us to stay humble. And its rediscovery after a war, a museum bombing, and decades of mystery reminds us that no story is ever truly lost. Even now, expeditions are returning to the Sahara. New fossils are being uncovered. New species are being named. Every shard of bone brings us closer to not just understanding Spinosaurus, but the world it lived in. A world of crocodile beasts, razor-toothed fish, flying giants, and river monsters. So, what's next? Maybe we'll find a complete skeleton. Maybe we'll discover that Spinosaurus could dive. Maybe we'll uncover relatives even weirder than this. But one thing's for sure, as long as there's sand to sift, rock to crack, and questions to ask, Spinosaurus will keep swimming through the imagination of scientists and storytellers alike. Not bad for a dinosaur we almost forgot. Not bad at all. If you're fascinated by the creatures that ruled before us, hit like, subscribe, and share this with a fellow dinosaur lover. There's a whole forgotten world waiting to be uncovered.